Good evening. It's Tuesday, December 13th, 2011, and tonight we're going to start talking about the debate last Saturday night amongst the presidential candidates. And as you'll recall from the last video that I made, I called the presidential election next year for Newt Gingrich. So we'll see how that continues to work. We've got one more large debate to go, and I think Donald Trump's going to hold a debate, but I'm not sure who's going to show up for that. But anyways, last Saturday night, I was actually watching the debate on television, watching it live stream at the same time, and then also watching the ABC News blog that was in the background. And I was interested to see that, you know, the mainstream press, which normally is considered to have a little bit of a liberal bent, and I think a lot of people figure that into what they hear and see from the press, but that the biggest thing they took out of it immediately after that debate was the $10,000 bet that Mitt Romney made with or tried to make with Rick Perry, the governor of Texas. And that didn't go over too well with the press. And I think they were trying to pull that as the big story from that night. Well, it got a little bit of airplay over the weekend, and then as late as I think yesterday I saw something about it, but it wasn't mentioned too much. But it does bring up a couple of interesting points. So if we assume right now that Mitt Romney and Newt Gingrich are the front runners, and I think that goes without, I don't know that there's too many polls or people that feel that those two are not the front runners, then we have a few things to look at. First of all, it was a gaffe. But, you know, when they were talking about their backgrounds, and it was one of the questions, Mitt Romney didn't struggle with the question, but it was, you know, he grew up as a child of privilege, and I don't think anyone else up on the stage could said the same thing. Huntsman could have if he'd have been there, but he wasn't, because I understand he didn't make the minimum requirement to participate in that debate. So there's been a lot made in the media, or somewhat, of the fact that Mitt Romney and Rick Perry don't personally like each other, and I think that comes out during the debates, and it came out again. But it raised an interesting point that I think a lot of people, myself included, especially Yahoo a couple of months ago had a little blurb in their news showing the houses that all of these candidates live in. And I was interested to look at that, and I found, of course, that Mitt Romney has many houses, some beautiful property too. That log cabin would be nice, but probably he can count the number of houses that he has, which John McCain, of course, couldn't in the last election, and that cost him a lot. But I think a lot of people see Mitt Romney as a child of privilege. Maybe some think that he thinks that it's his turn to be president. But my thought is this: if he's been of privilege all of his life, how is it that he is going to work for the electorate in a manner that would help most of the people in the United States who are not what the OWS call the 1%, but the other 99%, and the, you know, people that go to work for a living every day? I don't think he's ever done that. So he has no perspective on it. He has no frame of reference. And I think that's going to hurt him a lot upcoming. And I think as every day goes by in another debate happens, another speech is made, I think he loses a little bit more ground, and the polls, I think, reflect that. So the $10,000 bet wasn't a good idea. I don't think I would carry that as the biggest thing out of that debate. I think all of them did well. I was a little surprised to see Newt fire back at Romney about you would have been a career politician, which I think absolutely is what would have happened. He told the truth. There was a little booing in the audience, but I don't know that that was really directed at Newt so much. And then today, we hear that he sent out a memo to his campaign to keep everything positive, and I'm glad to see that happening. And I think it's going to come out that rather than the media trying to set up a slugfest amongst the candidates, that if Gingrich continues to run a positive campaign, I think it's going to benefit him a lot more than maybe some people would think. I also watched the debate, the Lincoln-Douglas style debate, they're calling it now, between Newt Gingrich and Jon Huntsman regarding foreign policy. Newt Gingrich, two things came out, and it was on NPR this morning also, that Gingrich admitted that he was nowhere near as versed on foreign policy as Jon Huntsman, and Jon Huntsman called Newt Gingrich a great historian. And I thought it was a good debate. Both men are very intelligent, and so I'm going to call that one a draw, but you learned a lot from it if you got to see it. I'm going to talk for a minute. I'm going to slip this in here because it's been on my mind, and that's this NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. I read a little bit more about it today. There's a lot of debate, and I read a lot of things online about what does it really mean, and some people say that it does not apply to U.S. citizens, but in fact, I think it does, and I think, as going back to what I said a little while back, as to depending on what you call the person, whether you call them a terror suspect or a U.S. citizen. And then I was reading today that there was a provision in there. Remember, President Obama said he was going to veto this. So I'm not sure that he's going to veto this because I'm not certain that he has the courage to do so. But I understand that the White House had called for language talking about anyone that performs or does a belligerent act would fall under this provision. Well, somebody's going to have to define belligerent now. So Ron Paul came out today and said that this was one of the NDAA is one of the most dangerous things happening in the United States right now, and he was shocked that it wasn't at the top of the headlines. And frankly, I am too. But outside of the mainstream media, it's getting a lot of attention. So then the last thing I want to talk about tonight is capital gains. Now, here is where I, as a average U.S. citizen, this is where I differ with some of the Republican candidates. Newt Gingrich says that capital gains tax should go to zero. And then there were, everyone else has some modification of that, or lower it or have it disappear, what have you. But I think the opposite. And this is why. I think the capital gains tax should be raised, and I think it should be raised significantly. Like, you know, it's 15% right now, which means it's capital gains income is taxed at the second lowest rate in the tax system, equivalent to the second from the bottom marginal rate. Why? Well, I say why, rhetorically, it's obvious why. It's to give a huge break to the wealthiest people in the United States. Now, that doesn't mean I'm against capitalism, but here's some things to look at. The capital gains and income tax rates, marginal rates, were at their highest in the United States when the U.S. was at its most productive, when we enjoyed a better quality of living than at any other time in our history, and that was from 1930 up to about 1980. In the 60s, marginal rates started to drop down a little bit, but in that time frame, when our country was at its wealthiest for everyone, is when the marginal tax rates were at the highest, and upwards of 70-80%. I think that there are a lot of things that need to be done in this country. I am by no means in favor of giving the government a blank paycheck. But that doesn't mean I go all the way to the other end either. And, with Grover Norquist hobbling so many Republican people on the Republican side with his silly tax pledge that he's been pushing for years and years and years, it sounds good, but it's only for the benefit of the very wealthy in this country. It doesn't benefit most of us. And, for example, we go back into the late 50s in the Eisenhower administration when we built the interstate highway system in the United States. There are a lot of big projects, a lot of infrastructure, things that need to be done in this country that need to be paid for. And the people that enjoy the most largesse in this country are the ones that should be paying the most for it. So it's ridiculous that, the top 0.1% earn the 50% of all the capital gains in the United States. Not the top 1%, the top 0.1%. I think that starts to make a lot of sense to a lot of people. We could do something like Canada does. Canada taxes capital gain, 50% of capital gains at that person's highest marginal rate. Something like that would make a lot of sense. A lot of sense. So those are my comments for tonight on Tuesday, December the 13th, and I hope you have a good evening.